Support for this program is provided in part by Guido's Fresh Marketplace. Welcome to The Natural Cook. I'm Anna Gershenson. Today I decided to make something that everybody loves, and it's pizza. And of course, this is a wonderful way to incorporate vegetables into your diet because you can put a lot of different vegetables onto your pizza. You don't have to go crazy when you assemble your toppings. It's good to put like a couple of them, maybe 3, but no more, not to overcrowd it. But another reason why I decided to make pizza today is that because we have such a wonderful resource right here in the Berkshires, and it's the Berkshire Mountain Bakery. And we'll talk about what is so special about Berkshire Mountain Bakery, but besides their wonderful sourdough breads, they also bake and sell pre-baked sourdough pizza crusts that are made with spelt flour and with wheat flour. And it's really a cinch to make a pizza using it. And I decided that I'll have to share this secret with you. I cannot keep it to myself. And today, that's what we are going to do. So first of all, I preheated the oven to 500 degrees. And this is the temperature that you should be baking your pizza on, whether you have pre-baked pizza crust or not. I also have this baking sheet. If you have pizza stone, by all means use it and put it together, you know, on a lower rack, on the lowest rack in the oven, together with your like to preheat. But I use just a baking sheet, half-sheet baking pan. And because it warps as it is cooking something under high temperature, so I actually set it aside, and this is what I use. I do not use it for any other thing. So it is sitting in the oven, and it's already like very, very hot. Okay, so what we're going to do is we will take this pre-baked pizza crust, and this is again, this is how I do it. And even if I have a fresh dough, this is the kind of technique that I developed. I take another baking pan that has no sides, okay, and I cover it with parchment. And if I have raw dough, I will sprinkle it with cornmeal so that my crust is not sticking to the paper, but here it's not going to stick anyway. So I'm placing it on this piece of parchment, and that will make it very easy for me to transfer it directly onto the baking sheet that is sitting in the oven. So what we are going to do is, first of all, these are the vegetables that we are using today. And we use leeks on one pizza. We use asparagus, and I'll show you what I do with them. And on the other pizza, we'll use mushrooms and red peppers. And with cheeses, you can go like, you know, you can use mozzarella, you can use, I bought Belgian Fontal, you can use some Parmesan cheese, Gouda, cheddar, there are many, provolone, there are many different cheeses you can use. So first, we're going to put some tomato sauce, and I don't put a lot of it because I don't want the pizza to get soggy. So I just spread a little bit and leave the edges. And there are even, you know, you can even have like grated tomatoes you can put on it, fresh grated tomatoes. All right, so we are covering our pizza here with some tomato sauce, and then what I do, I'll show you how I cleaned my leeks, but in the meantime I want to stick it in the oven quickly so that it will start baking. So after I clean the leeks and slice them thinly, I salted them because salt draws out moisture and makes them limp, and that makes them cook faster. And then I also drizzle with some olive oil and then toss it again, and then I'll put my leeks on top of this tomato sauce, and it will start cooking. So I will take just a little bit of oregano. I love having the oregano on my pizza, and so I will just sprinkle a little bit for flavor because we want to build that flavor. So let's put the leeks, spread them, and stick this all in the oven, and then we will continue talking about Richard's sourdough bread and why sourdough bread is good for you and stuff like that. Okay, so this looks good. So now I will take this and slide it together with this parchment onto that pre-baked pizza pan. Okay. All right. And so, and when it's ready, it will also be easy to take it out. Okay. All right. So it should be sitting there maybe for about 5 minutes, and then we will proceed with putting the cheese and asparagus on top of it. So let's show you what I do with leeks, number one. So the leeks come, with these long, kind of feathery-like greens. And what you want to do is you want to take and cut around to remove these greens, to just reveal the white part of the leek and pale green part of the leek. You don't want to use dark green part. And then once you have done it, then you will take your knife and hold the leek tightly, and then just cut it. And you see I use sewing motion because it makes it easier to cut through. And then you will either, if your sink is close by, mine isn't, so, or you can have a bowl of cold water and you can just swish it, because leek grows in sand. So there will be, sometimes it's pretty clean, but sometimes it's extremely sandy. And of course, you don't want that sand in your food. So this is what you are going to do to release the sand. And then you are going to put it on your cutting board and just slice it thinly like that. And once it's sliced, you will put it in a bowl, just like I did, sprinkled with a little bit of salt. You want it a little seasoned because everything tastes better when it's seasoned a little bit. Okay, so now we will be preparing our asparagus. And asparagus, when you buy it, you want to make sure that it's not wrinkled, that the tips are not bruised, and you can store it in the refrigerator. But the way I do it, I store it like flowers, and I recommend to store, also maybe your herbs like cilantro, parsley this way. You just take the bunch, you trim off the end to kind of like with flowers to release, to make a fresh cut so that the water can be absorbed. Cover it, put it in the refrigerator somewhere on the shelf, cover it with plastic, and it will keep well. But of course you want to use it as soon as possible, because the longer you wait, the more nutrients asparagus is losing. And I can't wait to get, seasonal asparagus, of course, to eat. So then what I do, I would just thinly slice it on a bias. And these are the slices that we are going to put on top of our pizza. And of course, first we'll cover it with cheese, and then we will cover it with asparagus. And I like making this particular pizza also with ricotta cheese, so I'll show you how I do it once it comes out of the oven. So let's cut it now. I already snapped my ends. I'll show you how to do it on a different piece of asparagus. Okay, so in the meantime, let's talk about why we eat sourdough bread and why it is better for us, for our digestion. The thing is that all the grains, as well as beans, as well as nuts and seeds, have this pythic acid. It's an antioxidant compound which has a lot of good qualities of its own. But what it does, it holds on to phosphorus in the grain. It's in the bran side of the grain, and in other in seeds and in beans, it's in the endosperm. So what actually is happening is that it saves the phosphorus for the grain when it is being sprouted and ready to grow. It needs the phosphorus. So that's what pythic acid does. So it's good for the grain, but it's kind of questionable for us. And I say questionable because it is actually a beneficial antioxidant. And that's why we are recommended to eat whole grains, because they would prevent colon cancer and other cancers. So it does have its good qualities. On the other hand, pythic acid binds to the minerals in our bodies, especially to minerals like magnesium and zinc, which our bodies need. So the way to release this pythic acid, in other words, to neutralize it, there are 3 ways to do it. One of them is to sprout, the other one is to soak, and the third one is to ferment. And of course, the bread that we are cooking with now, and what Richard bakes in his bakery, is all fermented bread. And the reason he is going to this length of fermenting the bread is because once it's fermented, you don't have to worry about pythic acid, and it doesn't interfere with digesting and absorbing your minerals. So I have to say also that it's not really, that straightforward, because, for example, if we're talking about using white flour, it's really, white flour is stripped of all the bran and fiber, and so pythic acid is not present there. But it is definitely present in whole grains. Also, when you are eating pythic acid, if you are eating like grains and beans and seeds in a meal, then your absorption of that mineral will be affected only in that particular meal. It's not going to carry over into the next meal. So it's important to know all these things so that you can make educated, decisions about when you eat what. And another thing that I wanted to add is that this is really this affects especially people who are on vegetarian diet or on vegan diet, because the iron absorption, which of course pythic acid prevents as well, iron is very important for our bodies. But when we eat meat, the iron, the form of iron that's in meat is called hemi-iron, and the iron that is in vegetable sources, vegetarian sources, is non-hemi-iron. And pythic acid does not affect iron that is from meat the way that it affects iron from grain. So you can really decide for yourself, you know, what it is that, how you distribute your meals, and knowledge is always very, very powerful. Okay, so I'm slicing the mushrooms. Of course, I wash them first, and I usually do not throw mushrooms into cold water because mushrooms are very high in moisture, and so I don't want to add to it, especially when it is going to go on top of the pizza. So I'm preparing mushrooms for my next pizza, and in the meantime, we can check what's happening with this one. Okay. All right. So I will take it. Oops. All right, so as you see, it was very easy for me to remove it. And now what I'm going to do is sprinkle some cheese. And I used Partsky mozzarella that I sliced thinly on my mandolin. And you want to use maybe a couple of ounces. You don't want to go with too much cheese, like on a 12-inch pizza. Okay, so I'm putting this cheese here, and I also will use a little bit of Fontal. Okay. And then when the pizza comes out of the oven, then you can sprinkle some of the Parmesan cheese if you want to. Okay, so combination of cheeses just gives us richer flavor. And now I will put my asparagus on top. And I also want to add some ricotta. So I'll put it here and there and flatten it. And so you'll have a lot of different interesting things, and it will be a very, very delicious pizza. And then we'll stick it back in the oven and finish baking. So you want to flatten your ricotta. All right. Okay. And I'll put a little salt here because I didn't salt the asparagus, but don't go nuts. Okay, and I'll put it back into the oven to finish baking. And in the meantime, we can work on our second pizza. All right. So let me take these, not to burn my hands. Okay. Okay. There we go. All right. So now we can work on our second pizza. So let's take this. We'll transfer the parchment, and we'll again take our tomato sauce. All right. Okay. So the reason to put different kinds of cheeses on your pizza is also because different cheeses behave differently as they are melting. Like some cheeses are, have delicious flavor and they have good amount of oils in them. Like, for example, cheddar cheese and, Gouda cheese. And something like mozzarella is really, it blisters it easily and browns. And so that's why you want to have that kind of combination. So right now, we are going to put some mozzarella right here on top. of our sauce. And then we will sprinkle our mushrooms. All right. Okay. And then we will slice the peppers. You cut it in half, and then you just cut around in the inside. I prefer red peppers because they are more flavorful and also they have more nutrients in them. And then slice into thin strips because they will cook much faster this way. All right. Okay. And you can do, you can create your own combination of vegetables, whatever you like. And it doesn't have to be just a vegetable pizza. You can put sausage, you can put salami on it. Whatever strikes your fancy. Okay. So this was a 16-inch pizza crust, and you can also get like a 10-inch pizza crust. The reason I got a 16-inch pizza crust because it's kind of more economical. I don't mind that that I can I can cut it in half, or I can put the whole thing inside. I wanted to make different toppings here, so I wanted to demonstrate you. Also, it's very easy. It would be very easy for you to make something like that in advance and to throw it in the oven, and then you bake it halfway, and then you take it out and cool it, and then you wrap it and freeze it, and so you can serve it. It will be ready for you, to finish baking for another, 7 minutes, and you will have a ready meal. So I don't know whether you were aware of how special Richard's bread is. And it's not just very nutritious, it's also very delicious. Richard actually started learning how to bake being in Europe, and he ran a bakery there. And then he met Michio Kushi, who had Macrobiotic Institute here, and Michio Kushi convinced him to come here, and that's how we lucked out having Richard working here. He moved here sometime in the 80s, and his bakery is very, very popular and produces wonderful quality breads. I discovered Richard when I lived in the Boston area, and I started patronizing natural food store, and I saw bread that had the name Richard Bourdon on it. I don't think it was called Berkshire Mountain Bakery then. And so I started buying this bread, and I just fell in love with it. So now that I live in the Berkshires, of course, I buy this bread all the time. Okay, so let's pull out our pizza. All right, and we'll put the second pizza over there. Okay, so you got the idea of how easy it is to make this kind of pizza at home when you don't have to deal with pizza crust. So now, of course, we will be putting our cheeses on top. And in order to make the pizza browner, you can stick a little bit under the broiler. Right now, I pulled it out because we have time limitation. But when you bake at home, it will take probably 5 minutes for when you are making this just baking with leeks, and then probably another 5 to 7 minutes. And you can watch, because this pizza crust is pre-baked, you can see that it's already like very nice and crispy. But in general, if you bake dough, like raw dough, then it shouldn't take you more than 10 to 12 minutes to have pizza ready. And of course, the crust will be really, really thin. Okay, all right. So let's put this into the oven and finish baking this. All right. Okay. I will put this back onto this baking sheet so that it would be finishing. All right. Okay. So while we're waiting for the pizza to finish baking, let's talk a little bit about a little more about the sourdough bread. And it is especially important for people who might have low tolerance to gluten, to soak their grains, to soak their nuts, to sprout the grains, and of course, when you're cooking beans, then you definitely soak your beans, because that will release the pythic acid and also make them more digestible and easier to cook. And the important thing also is to drain that water in which they were soaking, because whatever is released, the pythic acid that is released into the water, is not really good for you to consume. But interestingly enough, it's wonderful for plants. So you can save that water, and when you're watering your plants, you can add them to your plants. Today we discussed a very important topic that you might not have been familiar with, and that is cooking with grains, with seeds, with nuts. And the important thing that we learned is that you really need to, when you are eating whole grains in one meal, and you are aware that there are some nutrients, like basically minerals, that are getting bound and not being absorbed. And so not to perpetuate that kind of routine, it's important maybe in a different meal not to include those things into your diet. So let's take our pizza out. Okay, and you see it's nice and beautiful, and I'm sure it's delicious. We'll just have to finish cooking the second one. And thank you for joining us today, and come back and watch another show. Support for this program is provided in part by Guido's Fresh Marketplace.